Hi, this is Lisa DeMonte from mylegal.com. Today is Tuesday, March 23rd, and we're at the Georgetown University Law Center for the third and final day of a conference on law firm evolution, Brave New World, or business as usual. And I'm delighted to have as my guest this afternoon Peter Zeughauser from Zeughauser and Associates, or Zeughauser Group, excuse me. Peter, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Lisa.
Peter, you were just part of a panel discussion that we finished about managing the law firm labor force. And obviously, we've seen unprecedented changes in the legal industry. What kinds of trends are you seeing in terms of hiring at law firms?
Lisa, I think in big law, the big change this year has been a real slowdown in hiring. Law firms are still trying to digest the large classes that they took in 2007, 2008. Some law firms have deferred offers from 2010 for lawyers who would be starting in 2010 till 2012. So I think firms are still trying to get their footing on what their staffing needs are going to be, and that's going to depend on how their productivity looks over the coming year, strengthening in the fourth quarter of last year, seeming to continue now. On a bigger picture, as we mentioned during the panel at the conference, I think we're seeing that firms understand they need to be smarter about hiring. And probably Baker & McKenzie is the leading firm in that regard. They've hired a behavioral psychologist, or they worked with a behavioral psychologist to develop an interview screen so that they could identify candidates who would succeed well in a multicultural cross-border practice, a firm of 4,000 lawyers. And they use that screen across their platform. I think we're going to see more of that in the future as law firms have to really focus on who will succeed on their particular platform.
Interesting, because if the firms are deferring for a couple of years, they're pretty much underwater. And so for the graduates coming out in 2010, 11, and even 12, the future doesn't look bright. So what kinds of adaptations or changes do you think are going to be seen in the marketplace because of that?
Well, smaller classes, number one, smaller entering classes, clearly. Howry is an innovator. They're spending more time on training in their early classes, so they're investing in young associates, only expecting them to bill 700, 800, 900 hours, lowering the compensation to be commensurate with the level of competency, and also lowering the billing rates. But you're seeing firms generally finding ways to adapt to the increased economic pressure of the downturn, while at the same time make sure their pipeline is full of talent going forward. So I think you'll see more training programs for young lawyers who come in, smaller number of lawyers coming in, and more training programs, some of what Skadden did with their sidebar program, encouraging their associates to go into pro bono activities and work for non-governmental organizations for the first year with stipends. We saw that at Simpson Thacher, Sullivan and Cromwell. I think you're going to see more of that just to kind of get over the hump caused by the downturn.
So a little bit of a realignment in the way that they're bringing in the new associates and what their expectations are of the new associates, and giving them some on-the-job training that has been overlooked perhaps in the past in terms of a formalized program at the law firms.
Absolutely.
What do you think the future of big law is? Peter, we talked about that. That's been a reoccurring theme here at the conference. You know, is it gone? Is it dead? What's your feeling on that?
You know, I'm probably a contrarian to the views that have been expressed at the conference. I think the future is bright for big law. You know, the world's economic assets will continue to grow. It's the nature of the human condition to improve their lot in life. That means investing assets to provide better economic stability and growth in individual people's lives. That's natural resources, real property, personal property, financial assets. All those things are growing. The potential for growth is great in the world. China is 1.5 billion people. India is 1.5 billion people. There are still at least 2.5 billion people in those two countries alone that are living below the poverty level. Their countries are trying hard to bring them above the poverty level. It's working. Lawyers work at the intersection of where individuals and entities invest assets to improve, to grow them. And so I think the future is really bright for the legal profession, but it's changing. It's going to be more multicultural and more cross-border. and larger. We will see 4,000 lawyers, the biggest firm today. We will see 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 lawyer law firms to reach across continents and across borders to really be able to accommodate the demand for legal services across the globe as the world's emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China, all come into their own with a growing middle class.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Those are huge law firms. So you're definitely seeing that the big law is going to be there and it's going to be bigger.
Yes, I think Hogan Lovells is an example of that. I still think the number of players at that level is small, and it's a big segment of the market. It is the fastest growing segment of the market.
So we talked about change, and obviously you mentioned Brazil, India, China. Are those the areas that you see the change coming from, and why? And as we had the session a little bit earlier, you reminded all of us that yes, India is Asia. So where do you see the change coming from? Those areas particularly?
I think principally China. India is still too much of a closed bar. China will open up, I think, before India. China has a tremendously entrepreneurial spirit. The potential for growth in the Chinese economy is enormous. They have $2.5 trillion and euros, about 2/3 of that in dollars, 1/3 in euros to invest. They haven't yet tapped corporate financing. It's all of the growth in China has been done with equity financing. Their stock markets are young, and they are just now turning to an infrastructure, a regulatory and statutory infrastructure for corporate debt financing. There's no question that when China puts in place creditor protection statutes and regulations, that corporate financing will become a big tool for corporate growth in China, and we will see the Chinese companies quickly dominate the world market, and that's the big area of change and opportunity. Chinese lawyers work harder. They don't complain. They put in 16 and 18-hour hours, and they're 16 and 18-hour days, and they're happy to do it. They see a very bright future for themselves in China. They work in what American and Western attorneys would consider cramped working conditions, and they hotel for office space. And China is going to deliver a very high quality, efficient level of work product. They will deliver a very high quality work product efficiently. And I think that's the big challenge for the Western law firms. They don't want to be marginalized. One of our speakers yesterday talked about this is all about winners and losers. I think that's right. The real question is, can the indigenous American and European law firms be among the winners?
Well, only time will tell. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.